At my boyfriend's public TikTok, someone asked him to rate me and he smirked. Eliana, honestly, probably the most hideous girl I've ever been with, like a 4 on a good day. I disappeared that night. What Derek didn't know was that his hideous girlfriend was a senior financial analyst at Meridian Capital with a $127,000 salary, a professional network spanning 3 states, and the kind of strategic thinking that had helped corporate clients recover millions in fraud cases. For 3 years, I'd been subsidizing his lifestyle while he saw me as a placeholder until something better came along. That was about to change. I'm Eliana Rivera, 26, and I specialize in forensic financial analysis and digital fraud detection. My days are spent building airtight cases against people who think they're smarter than the system, tracking money trails that lead to criminal prosecutions, and working with attorneys who handle 8-figure settlements. Derek thought I was just some boring office worker who paid the bills and cooked his meals. He had no idea I'd been quietly documenting every financial irregularity in our relationship while building a professional reputation that could dismantle his comfortable world with a few strategic phone calls. We'd been together since I was 23, meeting when he helped fix my garbage disposal in the apartment complex where we both lived. He seemed stable then, with his steady IT support job and his easy smile. The first year was good, full of Netflix nights and weekend camping trips with his friends. But somewhere along the way, I'd started covering more and more of our shared expenses while Derek's contributions dwindled to almost nothing. The TikTok incident happened on a Tuesday night at Throwbacks, that dive bar where Derek and his buddies hung out every Monday. I recognized the flickering Budweiser sign immediately, the same one we'd counted the flickers of while waiting for our food during one of our early dates. In the video, Derek was clearly 6 beers deep, arms slung around his friend Xavier, when someone off camera asked him to rate his girlfriend. The transformation in his face was instant. Not his normal smile, but something cold and calculating, like he was about to share a joke at my expense. Eliana? Honestly, probably the most hideous girl I've ever been with, like a 4 on a good day. The bar erupted in laughter. Someone yelled, "Savage!" and Derek just kept going. But she cooks really good enchiladas and never complains when I go out with the boys, so I keep her around. Low maintenance, you know? When someone asked if he worried I'd see the video, he laughed again. Nah, she doesn't even know what TikTok is. Besides, thinking about upgrading soon anyway. Too much baggage. I found out through my friend Amara, who sent me the link during my lunch break with a text that just said, "Call me now," in all caps. Amara isn't dramatic. She once texted, "slight issue," when her apartment was flooding. The timestamp showed the video was posted at Monday night while I was at home doing a clay mask and texting Derek goodnight. The video already had 177,000 views. Sitting in that break room, staring at my phone, I didn't cry or scream. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Something that reminded me of the moment during a fraud investigation when all the pieces suddenly click into place. This wasn't a drunken mistake. It was a revelation of Derek's true character, delivered with witnesses and permanent documentation. From a strategic standpoint, he'd just handed me everything I needed to understand exactly who I'd been subsidizing for 3 years. But what Derek couldn't possibly understand was the position he'd put himself in. As a forensic financial analyst, I don't just look at numbers. I look at patterns of deception, financial manipulation, and systematic fraud. And as I sat there replaying his words, I realized I'd been living with a textbook case of financial exploitation disguised as a relationship. My professional network at Meridian includes Patricia Lawson, one of the state's most aggressive family law attorneys who'd used my forensic analysis to secure $2.3 million in hidden asset recovery just last year. Marcus Webb, a private investigator specializing in digital forensics, owed me several favors for cases where my financial documentation had made his investigations airtight. Jennifer Blake, a forensic accountant who'd helped Fortune 500 companies track sophisticated embezzlement schemes, regularly consulted with me on complex fraud cases. These weren't just business relationships. They were professional alliances built over years of successful collaboration. And what Derek had just done, publicly humiliating someone while benefiting from their financial support, had all the hallmarks of the exploitation cases I built careers prosecuting. That evening, instead of going home to confront Derek, I drove to Target and bought a duffel bag, toothbrush, phone charger, and enough clothes for a week. Total cost $63.47. The receipt is still in my wallet because even in crisis, I document everything. I drove to Amara's apartment and sat in her parking lot for 20 minutes, not crying, just thinking strategically about my next moves. When I finally went upstairs, Amara took one look at me and poured 2 glasses of the cheap rosé we used to drink in college. "What's the plan?" she asked, and that's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't giving Derek the satisfaction of a dramatic breakup scene he could tell his friends about later. I was going to disappear and let him face the consequences of his choices without my financial support or household management. We spent that night creating a systematic extraction plan. Block Derek on all platforms, change every password he knew, call out sick from work for the rest of the week, and tell only my mother where I actually was. By midnight, Derek had texted 7 times, starting with normal stuff like, "Hey, what do you want for dinner?" and escalating to, "Where are you and why aren't you answering?" Not once did he mention the TikTok. Not one apology or acknowledgement of what he'd done. The beauty of my disappearance was that Derek had no framework for understanding it. In his mind, I was the low-maintenance girlfriend who never caused problems. He couldn't conceive that I might have seen the video or that I might be capable of strategic decision-making. So when I vanished, his first assumption was that something had happened to me, not that I'd chosen to leave. By Wednesday, he'd called 12 times. By Thursday morning, the TikTok had mysteriously disappeared from his account, but it was too late. The video had already been screen recorded and was circulating through our mutual friend groups. My phone was blowing up with "Are you okay?" messages from people I hadn't talked to in months, all expressing shock at how Derek had spoken about me. Friday brought the first real consequence. Derek showed up at my workplace during lunch, forcing me to hide in the supply closet while my coworker told him I wasn't available. Through the door, I could hear his voice, that familiar tone I'd once loved, now sounding tired and desperate. My manager, who'd seen the video on her own TikTok feed, gave me permission to take another personal day if needed. By the weekend, Derek was using his friends' phones to try reaching me, having realized I'd blocked his number. Rachel from my old college group chat sent screenshots of his Instagram stories, vague posts about missing someone and biggest mistake of my life, with sad song lyrics, classic damage control, trying to control the narrative before too many people learned the truth. Sunday night brought 26 missed calls. Monday morning, 32. That's when I knew I needed to return to my apartment to collect mail and assess the situation. I figured 8 a.m. was safe since Derek usually left for work but I was wrong. He was sitting on my welcome mat, the one he'd given me that said, "Home is where the Wi-Fi connects automatically." When he heard my keys, he looked up, and I barely recognized him. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing the same Metallica shirt from his Instagram story 2 days earlier. When he saw me, he literally collapsed, not in a dramatic way, but like his body had given out. "Eliana, please, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said those things. I was drunk. The guys were pressing me. I never meant any of it. Please just talk to me." I stood there with my keys still in hand, looking at this man who'd publicly called me hideous while I'd been financially supporting his lifestyle for 3 years. "I saw what you really think of me. There's nothing to talk about." I stepped around him like he was furniture, collected my mail, and walked back to my car. He followed me to the parking lot, still crying, still begging. But I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away. He called 5 more times before I even made it back to Amara's. That confrontation confirmed what I'd suspected. Derek wasn't devastated about hurting me. He was devastated about losing control of the situation. His tears weren't about remorse. They were about consequences he couldn't manipulate or charm his way out of. And that's when I realized the full scope of what was happening. Over the next week, as I stayed at Amara's and watched Derek's increasingly desperate attempts to contact me, I began to see patterns I'd been blind to during our relationship. Amara asked pointed questions that forced me to examine our dynamic more critically. Had Derek ever made jokes about my appearance before? Well, there was that time he said my favorite jeans made me look kind of wide, but in a cute way. And when I got highlights last summer, he'd asked if the salon meant to make them that brassy. Did Derek support my career goals? He'd said he was proud when I got promoted, but also suggested I might not want to take it because the stress might be too much. When I talked about pursuing additional certifications, he always changed the subject to how expensive continuing education was. Did we have equal standards in our relationship? Not really. If I was 15 minutes late meeting him, I'd get increasingly annoyed texts. But he could cancel plans last minute to hang with his friends, and I was expected to be understanding. I handled all our shared logistics, financial planning, and household management, while he focused on his hobbies and social life. By the time Amara and I finished analyzing 3 years of relationship patterns, I had a sinking realization. The TikTok wasn't an aberration. It was just the first time I'd seen Derek's true opinion of me without the filter of needing to maintain access to my financial support in domestic labor. That Thursday night, Derek escalated to showing up at Amara's apartment with grocery store flowers and an 8-page handwritten letter. Amara handled him at the door while I listened from the kitchen, his voice cracking as he begged for just 5 minutes to explain himself. The letter was full of tear stains and promises to spend the rest of my life making this up to you, but also classic deflection about being drunk and peer pressured by his friends. One line actually got to me. I said those horrible things because I'm insecure and afraid you'll realize you're too good for me. For about 20 minutes, I actually considered calling him. The manipulation was that effective. But then Amara's Wi-Fi crashed, and instead of watching Netflix, we ended up going through photos on my phone. That's when I had my real epiphany. In literally every picture of Derek and me from the past year, I'm looking at him with this bright, loving smile, and he's either looking at his phone, off to the side, or making some stupid face. Not a single photo where he's looking at me the way I'm looking at him. How would I never notice that my own photos documented the one-sided nature of our relationship? The weekend brought new developments. My brother Miguel called to tell me Derek had shown up at his apartment at 7 a.m. asking about my whereabouts. Miguel, being protective, told Derek that another visit would result in a different kind of conversation. I appreciated the support, but I was starting to feel suffocated by Derek's attempts to reach me through every possible channel. So I sent him one direct message. I need space. Please stop contacting me, my friends, and my family. I'll reach out when and if I'm ready to talk. I sent it at and immediately turned off my phone for 3 hours because I couldn't handle seeing his response. When I finally checked again, there were 5 paragraphs waiting for me. The gist, he understood, he'd respect my boundaries. He'd wait forever if that's what it took. This was immediately followed by 3 more texts asking when forever might end, and if we could meet for coffee next week. So much for respecting boundaries. The real revelation came Sunday night when Derek posted a public apology video on Instagram, tagging me directly. 4 minutes and 27 seconds of him sitting in his car, looking directly at the camera with red-rimmed eyes, telling everyone who'd seen that horrible TikTok how sorry he was. He called me the most beautiful person inside and out that he'd ever known and talked about learning to be a better man. The comments were a mess. Some people praising him for taking accountability, others calling him out for making my humiliation about him again. His buddy Xavier commented, "Stay strong, bro," like Derek was the victim. But what bothered me most was realizing that even his rock-bottom moment was carefully staged, probably with multiple takes, posted at optimal engagement hours on a Sunday evening. Monday morning, I decided I needed to return to my own apartment. Amara had been incredible, but I couldn't hide at her place forever. Plus, her hot water heater was acting up. As I packed my duffel bag, my phone pinged with a Venmo notification. Derek had sent me $300 with the note, "For the anniversary dinner we'll never have." Our 3-year anniversary would have been the following week. I sent it back immediately and blocked him on Venmo, too. The drive back to my apartment felt surreal, like returning to a crime scene. Every red light had me checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see Derek's car. But the building was empty when I arrived. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, nodded at me in the hallway like I hadn't been gone for over 2 weeks. Inside my apartment, everything felt both familiar and foreign. My plants were dead, the air smelled stale, and there was a lingering scent of Indian takeout I'd forgotten in the fridge. But then I saw them. Post-it notes everywhere. On my bathroom mirror, "I miss your smile." On my fridge, "Remember our first date here." On my bedside table, "I can't sleep without you." The violation was immediate and visceral. Derek still had my spare key, and he'd been inside my apartment while I was gone, leaving these pathetic breadcrumbs like some kind of romantic gesture. I called my landlord immediately and explained the situation. He agreed to change the locks the next morning. That night, systematically removing and destroying each post-it note, I realized something important. I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry, but it was a clean, energizing anger focused on action rather than self-pity. Derek had shown me exactly who he was, and now I was going to show him exactly who he'd been underestimating. Tuesday brought Xavier to my door, looking uncomfortable and shifting from foot to foot in the hallway. He'd come as Derek's ambassador, he said, because Derek was in a really bad place and just wanted 5 minutes to explain himself. When I asked Xavier if he remembered laughing in that video while Derek called me hideous, he had the decency to look ashamed. "He didn't mean any of it, Eliana. You know how guys talk when they're together. I don't want to be with someone who talks like that with his friends, drunk or sober. I don't want to wonder what he says about me when I'm not around. And I don't want to be with someone who needs a public meltdown and friendship intervention to realize he values me." That evening, I made a decision that surprised even me. I ordered dinner from the Thai place Derek always complained was too spicy, but that I secretly loved. I watched The Last of Us, which he'd refused to try because he doesn't like zombie shows. I used the fancy bath bomb my mom had gotten me for Christmas that I'd been saving for a special occasion. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Derek. Please don't block this number. I just need to know one thing. Did those 3 years mean anything to you? Because they were everything to me." I stared at those words for a long time, thinking about 3 years of inside jokes and holiday dinners and lazy Sunday mornings, 3 years of building what I thought was a shared life, but also 3 years of small criticisms disguised as helpful suggestions, 3 years of walking on eggshells around his moods, 3 years of making myself smaller to make him more comfortable. I didn't reply. I just added the number to my blocked list and turned off my phone, but I couldn't sleep. Thinking about how Derek's version of those 3 years being everything to him was apparently compatible with calling me hideous to his friends and planning to upgrade to someone with less baggage. The next morning brought an unexpected encounter that changed everything. I was at Target, my emotional support store, picking up new sheets because I'd finally decided to get rid of the gray ones Derek always said brought out the blue in his eyes. I was debating between sage green and terracotta when I noticed a woman staring at me from the end of the aisle. She approached looking uncomfortable and asked if I was the girl from Derek's TikTok. My stomach instantly knotted. Before I could respond, she launched into an awkward apology about being one of the people who'd commented something mean on the original video, but felt terrible after seeing Derek's public apology. Standing there clutching my terracotta sheets while a stranger apologized for cyberbullying me based on my ex-boyfriend's public humiliation was a new low I hadn't anticipated. But it also crystallized something important. I wasn't just Eliana anymore to some people. I was the girl from the TikTok. My humiliation had become part of my identity. That realization made me furious in a completely new way, not sad angry like I'd been for weeks, but energized. Get shit done angry. I went home and made a list of everything I'd been putting off or avoiding because of Derek's preferences or opinions. Cut my hair short like I'd always wanted. Join the kickboxing class Amara kept recommending. Apply for that digital marketing certificate program. Redecorate my bedroom without worrying about masculine-friendly colors. By Sunday, I'd already tackled the haircut, walking into Supercuts without an appointment and chopping off 7 inches. The stylist kept asking if I was sure, if I needed more time to think about it. I told her I just needed a change, mentally naming each snip after something Derek had said to me over the years. When she spun me around to see the result, I barely recognized myself, and that felt perfect. That's when things took an unexpected turn. Xavier called me, sounding nervous and talking too fast. He said he needed to tell me something important about the original TikTok, something that might change how I saw everything. I almost hung up, tired of all the drama, but then he said something that stopped me cold. The TikTok wasn't spontaneous, Eliana. Derek planned it, and I can prove it. We agreed to meet at Starbucks the next day. Miguel insisted on coming and sitting at a nearby table, just in case. Xavier looked rough when he arrived, not Derek-level disaster, but definitely stressed. After 5 minutes of awkward apologies, he finally pulled out his phone and showed me something that made my blood run cold. It was a WhatsApp group chat from 5 weeks before the TikTok incident. The thread showed Derek asking his friends for advice on how to break up with me because he'd met someone at the gym, and I was getting too serious. Their suggestions ranged from gradually becoming distant to picking fights over nothing to just be an ass on social media so she sees it and dumps you. The final message in the thread was from Derek. TikTok might be the move. She never checks it anyway. Sitting there reading those messages, I felt something shift permanently inside me. The TikTok wasn't a drunken mistake or a moment of poor judgment. It was a calculated plan to humiliate me so badly that I'd break up with him, allowing him to look like the victim while pursuing this other woman. And when I disappeared instead of confronting him, creating a narrative he couldn't control, he'd panicked. Xavier explained that he'd found the messages while looking for something else and couldn't stay silent anymore. Derek had been lying to everyone, playing the heartbroken boyfriend while still texting this Adriana person. Xavier had seen them together at Chipotle just the day before. I thanked Xavier for showing me the truth and walked out of Starbucks with Miguel trailing behind, asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. That night, I made a decision. After 37 days of silence, I was going to talk to Derek, not to reconcile, but to let him know that I knew everything. Sunday morning at exactly 10 a.m., I texted him. "We need to talk today, 2 p.m., Java Hut on Main. Don't be late." He responded within 12 seconds. "I'll be there. Thank you, Eliana. I love you." I spent the next 3 hours oscillating between certainty and panic, changing outfits 4 times and practicing what I wanted to say. I arrived 20 minutes early to secure the corner table with my back to the wall, ordered a chai latte I had no intention of drinking, and waited. Derek walked in scanning the cafe until he spotted me. He looked better than I expected, showered and shaved, wearing the blue button-down I'd given him for his birthday. For a split second, my heart did that familiar flip it always did when I saw him. Then I remembered the WhatsApp messages. He reached for a hug, which I avoided by gesturing to the chair across from me. His face fell, but he sat down and launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech about how sorry he was, how much he missed me, how the past month had been the worst of his life. I let him talk for exactly 2 minutes, then placed my phone screen up between us, open to the screenshots Xavier had sent me. "So who's Adriana?" I asked. The look on his face was like watching someone get hit with a stun gun. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Xavier shouldn't have. Just tell me the truth, Derek. For once. What followed was 20 minutes of the most illuminating conversation we'd ever had. Once he realized he was caught, the apologies stopped and the excuses started. Adriana was just a friend at first. He'd been confused about our relationship for months. The TikTok was stupid, but he never thought I'd see it. I panicked when you disappeared. I realized I'd made a huge mistake. Adriana wasn't worth losing you over. That's when it clicked. He wasn't devastated about hurting me. He was devastated about losing control of the narrative, about everyone knowing what he'd done. I took a sip of my cold chai and said the words I'd been practicing all morning. I'm not here to get back together, Derek. I'm here to tell you that I know everything and I'm done. Don't contact me, my friends, or my family again. We're over. His eyes welled up with tears that I was now 99% sure were performative. But I love you. We can fix this. I'll do anything. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent 3 months planning how to humiliate me so you could be with someone else. I stood up, gathering my purse and jacket. That's when he played his final card, one I wasn't expecting. I broke the lease on my apartment. I've been staying with my mom. I thought we'd be moving in together next month like we planned. For a brief moment, I felt guilty, like I was the one ruining his life. Then I remembered the cold calculation of those messages, the systematic planning of my public humiliation. You should call Adriana. I'm sure she has room at her place. I walked out without looking back. No dramatic exit, no scene, just done. He texted 17 times in the next 2 hours, cycling through apologetic, angry, and desperate. I didn't reply to any of them. Around noon, my phone lit up with a text from yet another unknown number, but this time it wasn't Derek. Hi, Eliana, you don't know me, but I think we need to talk. Derek's been telling me one story and apparently telling you another. This is Adriana. We met for coffee that afternoon, and it turns out she's actually nice. She had no idea Derek had a girlfriend until 2 weeks earlier when she saw his public apology TikTok. He told her he was single, had been for months, and was dealing with a crazy ex who couldn't let go. Sound familiar? The craziest part was comparing notes on his lies. She showed me texts where he was telling her he loved her the same day he was leaving sobbing voicemails on my phone. By the end of our conversation, we were following each other on Instagram and had made plans to check out a new wine bar opening next month. That evening, I did something I'd been putting off. I temporarily unblocked Derek on Instagram to see what he'd been posting. His story from 3 hours earlier was a black screen with glimpse of us playing, complete with text about not knowing what you have until it's gone. His profile picture was still us from last summer, and his most recent post was a throwback from our 2nd anniversary with the caption, "I'd give anything to go back." Meanwhile, Adriana had sent me screenshots of him texting her that same day asking if she wanted to hang out later. I've never felt more certain of a decision in my life. The next day marked exactly 40 days since I discovered the TikTok. 40 days of pain, anger, confusion, and finally clarity. I officially blocked Derek on every platform, changed my phone number, told my landlord he was never to be allowed in the building again, and then did something just for me. Remember that digital marketing certificate I'd applied for? I got accepted. Classes start next month, and I paid the deposit with money I'd been saving for the apartment Derek and I were supposed to share. Last night, Amara, Miguel, and a few other friends came over for an impromptu Goodbye Derek party. We ordered pizza, drank cheap wine, and took turns reading his increasingly desperate texts from the past weeks. This morning, I woke up to a notification that Derek had tagged me in a new Instagram post. My finger hovered over the view button for about 3 seconds before I realized I didn't care what it said. His words have no power over me anymore. Instead, I deleted the notification, made my coffee, and sat on my balcony watching the sunrise. I'm not sad about those 3 years anymore. They weren't a waste. They were a lesson about red flags I'll never ignore again, about my own resilience, and about the kind of relationship I actually deserve. Derek thought he was upgrading when he planned to leave me for someone else. What he actually did was free me to find someone who sees my worth without needing a public humiliation and social media meltdown to realize it. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming the person you were always meant to be once someone stops making you smaller to accommodate their insecurities. Derek can keep his TikTok apologies and his performative heartbreak. I'll keep my new haircut, my career advancement, and the kind of self-respect that comes from walking away from someone who sees you as a placeholder until something better comes along.